My name is Murray Cast, and I am a Texas State grad student in the health psychology department. I'm 66 years old. Got my original undergraduate degree in 1969. Self-taught in real estate investment, and so I've done that. And I have a license degree in I have a license in irrigation, so I can put in sprinkler systems and things of that nature. So I've worked with Hispanics and had to learn a lot of the language because that was the language of that particular field, right? You can't say to them, you gotta speak English, you gotta speak Spanish.
Okay.
So, so there's diversity had kind of struck there, and I was always pretty impressed and have never forgotten the fact that a lot of my success and where I am right now was working with people that didn't have the advantages that I had. And so but I try to take that into consideration as I was working with them. Because I live in two different worlds. I live in the world of an older white person, and then I live in a college academic setting. I'm kind of in both areas. And what it means over here is something different than what it means over here. From an academic standpoint, what I would say, oppression, what that means is that one group takes precedence over another group. That their lives are significantly different than someone else's life that is different. Someone that is different would be someone of a different race, someone of a different sexual gender identity. Those would be differences.
And this is your academic definition?
That's my academic definition, yes.
Okay. What's the definition over there?
Well, the definition over there is I'm pretty much somebody that words mean something to. So one of the things I did this morning was to look up, when I first thought of the word oppression, the first word that then came to me was repression, where you're holding someone back. So if just walking down the street, I'm a man on the street, and someone comes up and says, "What does oppression mean to you?" I'm going to say, well, it means you're repressing, you're purposely and intentionally holding someone back. As I looked up the definition in Merriam-Webster, it says cruel and excessive authority. I don't know anybody who's cruel. So when I see that definition in Merriam-Webster, I reject it outright that I'm a part of some group that is cruel and repressive. But what I do accept is the fact that I have a lot of privileges, a lot of opportunities, that I live in a world where I don't have to look over my shoulder and other people do. There's not anybody that I come across that says that, blacks have come too far, or the Mexicans shouldn't do this, or there are issues about immigration, and I'm happy to talk to you about those. But I don't think anybody says that they wish that something bad or they wish evil things upon anyone else. I came from a world of segregation, whether it was actually, we were segregated in neighborhoods. We lived out on the street. The park my house kind of backed up to a park, but the next street over, those people lived on the main street, but behind there was kind of like a whole different world. It was black people. It was all black people that lived back there. And you didn't walk over there. It's not that anybody said you were to get beat up. It just wasn't your place to go. When I was a little boy, there were restrooms that said coloreds only or whites only. There were, I saw it in it wasn't living color because TVs were black and white, but, with the hoses and the dogs and things of that nature. There were a lot of mixed messages, I think, when I grew up. We could say the N-word, but we were kind of told, that's really not nice. Now, if we'd have said damn or hell, we would have been in some pretty serious trouble for using bad language, but if we used the N-word, we just told that wasn't nice. I know that one time, and I probably was about 7 years old, and I can tell times because of where I lived. I lived in this house, so I was this age. And we must have said something to a black man who was kind of the the caretaker at the library that was up the street.
Okay.
I will tell you this, he felt comfortable enough to come and tell my mother that we had used the N-word.
Who's we?
Myself and other kids.
So friends of yours?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, can you tell me the scene for a moment? I mean, when?
No, I think that he came out, this is gonna be just off the top of my head. And he came out and we called him, hey, you big whatever. And so it's very uncomfortable for me to say the word. I'll just tell you,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of words that are uncomfortable for me to say, and they're very uncomfortable for me to hear. And and part of it is because I used them at a time and it was hurtful, and I didn't think it was hurtful, but I realize now that it was hurtful. So it's to say, well, I could use it in this context. I don't like to use it in any context. So I think we said that, and we would have said that because he came and told my mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother said, you can't do that. You can't say that. Now, she didn't necessarily, but on the other hand, we had a black lady that worked for us. Her name was Pearl, really a sweet, kind of a lost soul. And shouldn't tell stories on my mother because she was really a great woman, but it was a different time. But Pearl would come and she would iron for us. We were poor. I think Pearl got like 50 cents for coming and spending the day ironing. And but she couldn't, she was given ice water, but in a mayonnaise jar, not one of the regular glasses. Now, we didn't have any glasses that even matched. I mean, it's not like, we had really nice glasses and we were afraid that Pearl would break them. So, there was a message there that, that Pearl was different. So what I saw were things that I didn't like. And it really wasn't at a time that I could speak out about it. Although I do kind of remember in college that there were conversations about, we didn't really use the word racism because words have changed over time. If I look up the word racism now, it is not anywhere near the definition of racism back in the 60s. And the definition of racism back in the 60s was the feeling that one race is superior to another race. That's what the definition was. So I could say at that time, well, I don't feel like I'm superior to anybody. I don't feel that way. When I went to Vietnam, and that was another kind of an eye opener. All of a sudden, I probably, not that I was in a high SES, social economic strata. What is it? System status. Not that I was that, but I was pretty level, middle of the road. And then when I got to Vietnam, and even certainly during basic training and things of that nature, man, it was an entirely different. I mean, there were really feelings of black people that they had been oppressed, and they had. And while there were more white people there, it was certainly disproportionate, and that was easy to see also. And there was a real pushback there. There was a real pushback. Now, surprisingly, what would happen is out in the bush. I was fortunate I didn't have to be out in the bush, meaning in the jungles fighting. Some of my white privilege got me to be able to stay in the. Actually, I was supposed to go out there, but I was supposed to be a rifleman, what they call 11 Bravo. But when I got over to Vietnam, they needed some clerk typists, and so they said, and here I am with a mixed group, but a lot of disproportionate Hispanic and blacks. And they said, can anybody type? Well, I graduated from college, so quickly my hand goes up, and then I interviewed with a couple of white officers, and I got the job. Now, I can't remember if anybody else even raised their hand, right? I mean, I'm so excited that this is going to happen that I got the job. So that's a white privilege that I got, I'm sure. It may sound like things are inconsistent, but as we move in life, we move and it doesn't necessarily mean that we totally make absolute leaps, all along. And so I can say to you that when I was in Vietnam, there was a certain unfairness. What would happen is you couldn't. I was fortunate to be in kind of a back area, a rear area. It was out, but the base was so big that if incoming rounds were on one end of the base, they didn't even put alarms at the other end of the base. It was just that big. But it was out. But my recollection is that a lot of the black soldiers were feeling a certain empowerment. They were together. They could talk about these things, and probably half of the MPs were black, just because. And so what would happen is you had to wait in line to get into the PX. Well, a lot of times the black guys would all kind of hang out up at the front of up by where the door was, and there's this long line. Now, there were black guys in the line too, but there would be a number of black guys up there, and so when there were going to be 20, that somebody came and said 25 more. Well, there'd be 13 or 14 of those black guys who were just milling around up there that would go in. Well, people groused about that, pretty seriously. They didn't like it because the MPs that happened to be up there were black, and they just let them do it. Now, again, at the time, that's pretty frustrating, but I look back on it, and do I think maybe some white guys got some shots at things along the way that some black guys didn't? Yeah, probably a lot more often.
Okay.
I mean, I can remember the Olympics in Mexico City. I can't remember what year that was, but I can still remember. And I haven't looked this up. It's just I remember this. John Carlos and there were a couple of other guys that they were on the podium. I think there were 3 black guys who had won 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And so when they're playing the American flag, it was they did the thing. And of course, I know a lot of white Americans are going, man, just you keep your dirty laundry at the house. Don't. But they did it, and to their credit, quite honestly. When I saw the thing with John Carlos doing the deal, the thing that bothered me was that, it was fine for them to in our society, to make that point. But as a country, we should have kind of stood together and just accepted the flag. What I realize now that I didn't realize then, and I can't give you a date that happened, I don't think that when people make transformations, it's Paul being knocked off the horse, and the flashing light, and they go on from there, carrying the banner. I don't think that's how most people operate in the world. So I would have wanted John Carlos to come back and say, listen, I want it for our country. I want to be an American, and what I think is that we haven't been treated fairly, yada, 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 yada. But he told the Russians, and he told, a lot of other people that didn't, it was none of their business. I mean, again, I was wrong in that. I mean, I recognize that now, that he had a platform on the world stage, right?
Yeah, right.
That was his moment.
Yeah,
It was his moment. In that moment, he could do what he wanted to do, and he should have done it. But I didn't recognize that at the time. There wasn't any specific event that brought me. One of the things that is somewhat difficult is, once again, where we are raised and how we are raised is an important thing. So one of the things that I was taught as a kid, even though I remember I gave you the mixed messages, was you treat everybody the same. We were told that even though we used the N-word, we really weren't allowed to use that word, but it wasn't the same as saying damn or hell. I mean, those were really bad. So if we don't say that. So the message, and the message was, you treat everybody the same. We were told that we had to treat that man with respect, the black man from the library. We had to treat him with respect. I don't remember my mother saying, even if he's black, although if I went back there, if I was able to, and that was said, it wouldn't shock me. I'm a pretty outgoing sort of person, and I catch the eye of a lot of people. I don't even do it intentionally, but I don't think I do it intentionally, but I do. And I smile a lot. And so, and I've told people this, if I smiled at 50 people in the course of a day, and 25 of them were black, and 25 of them were white, the most sincere smiles that I would get were from black people. I mean, there was a genuineness in their smile. And this was before I took the diversity class. So then I take the diversity class, and I find out that, a lot of these people were just smiling at me because they felt like that's what they had to do, that was where they had to go with things. And I'm thinking, here I think I'm trying to make a connection with people, and I'm finding out that in how many cases was I not really making a connection, but just forcing someone to do something that they really didn't want to do. That's a hard thing, because if I smile at somebody, it's a smile of sincerity and genuineness. And if they weren't smiling back at me that same way, and if I walked away saying, you know what, I just made a great connection with another human being. It was only for 2 seconds, but you know what? It was a great 2 seconds, and that's going to build on other good 2 seconds that go on in my life, or lots of other seconds that go on. But if you then have to say, you know, a goodly portion of those people only did it out of a sense of obligation or fear or you know, what society dictates for them to do. There's a part of me that kept saying, Murray, they really were smiling at you. They really were. Let it go. But then there was another part of me that kind of got upset about it, and that side really kind of won out. I don't know. I mean, none of us want to be blamed for something that someone else did, and I do think that there are certainly certain wrongs that have gone on in this world and continue to go on that have to be addressed. You know, there's no argument there at all. It's just, but when it becomes a very personal thing, that's different, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's made a difference for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And how do you think it's made a difference for you?
Well, first of all, I have outright rejected the idea that when a black person smiles back at me, that they're not being a nice person.
Okay.
I'm just going to accept the fact that I think that they are a nice person, and I'm going to accept the fact that I think that it's an opportunity for them to see that there are people that hold no animus towards them whatsoever, and that there are people that might take their side in a fight, particularly a fight that wasn't a fair fight.